Friends, happy Monday. We are gonna give it a minute while people come on. I was going to put in the community tab tonight how I've got some loose leaf tea that I made a mess with trying to take a thumbnail. I made a mess. But I wasn't 100% sure that I was going to come on and do this tonight. We had some drama in the doctor's office today, and I prayed about it quite intently and wasn't sure if I wanted to kind of put this out there. I have before on Instagram. YouTube is a little bit different for me. It just feels a little bit different. There's just a much larger audience there, and sometimes things like this are just welcome and people just are super supportive, and then sometimes all the trolls come out. So we'll just see what happens. I suppose we can handle trolls, right? What happened today was I went to a pulmonology appointment, and this pulmonologist is new. My last pulmonologist was fabulous. He was awesome. He was super thorough. He listened to, oh, you have autoimmune disease, and we need to, consider your inflammation, and we need to really come up with a good treatment plan. He would work with my pulmonologist or my rheumatologist, and my rheumatologist was amazing, but he just retired. So if this would have happened and my rheumatologist was not retired, he would be calling the man, yelling at him, putting him back in his place. I have no doubt, because my rheumatologist was like a no BS kind of guy, and he's like, no, this is not hard. Just do what you need to do for the patient. He would just do your job. And he was fabulous. And he was the only rheumatologist I've ever had that made me feel like I was heard with all of the things that I was experiencing. I made the heart and lung tea today. If you got my 50 herbal remedies ebook, this is in there, and I added a little extra tulsi and a little extra nettle for some extra support for my system, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it's hitting the spot. Okay, so I went in today to see him. Now, the nurse that is in his office has said to me, you need to have these longer appointments, so we're going to move you 10:30 to 11 so that you have this extra time, and he'll take time. He'll go into his lunch hour if he needs to. So I'm feeling optimistic, right, going into it. And he ended up basically coming in. Now, I got in there. She did all the nurse stuff. We were fine. I was answering questions, did my vitals, and we move on. He was 20 minutes late. There were no other patients there, but whatever. He could have paperwork. Fine. He comes in the room and immediately starts cutting me off when I'm talking. Asks me how I'm feeling. I'm like, no change. And then he's just immediately cutting me off. Just will ask me a question. We'll listen to 90% of what I'm saying, and then he'll cut off the rest of what I'm saying, and he'll just keep talking over me. So my big concern, because he began to say how you just need to see the rheumatologist because I want to put you on an asthma biologic, which is an injectable medication. And I said, I can't do that because I'm on Humira for my AS, and I cannot go off of that. And he said, well, I don't know about putting you on 2 biologics. I said, that's never going to happen because I will not do that to my body. He said, well, then there's nothing else I can really do for you, and you just need to go to rheumatology, and whatever. He just kept dismissing me, telling me there was nothing else he could do. And I forgot to mention this. Okay, so I had a bunch of blood work done before that was supposed to look at all my inflammation markers, and it was supposed to look at my allergies and all of that. He didn't even bring it up. And I forgot to bring it up. And I have access to the patient portal, which you should always have. Always have access to patient portal, because you can get your records, and then you go into your appointment educated, and you can say, hey, I've got this going on. What about this? And you can ask the questions. And if they skipped over something or they missed something, you just brought it to their attention. So this part of advocating for yourself, it's incredibly important to know how to advocate for yourself. So I have something in the lower parts of my lungs called atelectasis. Excuse me. Atelectasis is where your alveoli down at the bottoms of your lungs, those are your air sacs in your lungs. That's what's responsible for oxygen exchange in your lungs. So when you take a deep breath in, that air goes all the way down to the bottoms of the lungs, and it exchanges oxygen for carbon dioxide in your blood, and then you exhale and the carbon dioxide goes out, and that's your whole breath cycle. So the last, I don't even know, several chest x-rays, and I've had several, that I've had has shown atelectasis. And I went back and I looked in my charts, and there it is. It's there. It's in the radiologist notes, and it shows atelectasis in various points on both sides of my lungs. So I said, now I've got like chronic atelectasis. And this man told me that it was because of my weight. And I just pretty much froze from then on. Now, I have super thick skin, and to hear somebody say something like that is not going to faze me. I don't care. I don't care what he has to say. I know what's true. I know what's not. I know that, yes, while I have weight to lose, I don't have a massive amount of weight to lose. And this does not cause atelectasis. My own medical knowledge and education and experience tells me no. And not to mention, if he hadn't like broadsided me with that, I would have pulled it up and been like, let's go look on the Johns Hopkins website. Let's go look at Mayo, where, you know, these reputable, outstanding hospitals with these very thorough doctors talk about atelectasis and how weight has nothing to do with them. And, oh, you can do things to help with atelectasis. I would have said that to him, and I would have had no problem doing it because I don't get nervous and intimidated around doctors. It's very important that you don't do that. And if you do that, you need to work towards not doing that, because these people work for you. They work for you. While they're there to help you, and you do need to be able to lean on them and support them and just, you know, like let them do their thing. You also need to know when they're full of BS and when it's time to move on to another doctor. And that's what I want to talk about tonight. There is a herbal component to that. And I think that's where a lot of people come in to herbalism, is because mainstream healthcare failed them. How, you know, in a way that is just devastating and demoralizing sometimes, and just so hard, because it leaves you in this position where you're like, now what? What do I do now? These doctors are not hearing me. Nobody can give me answers. Nothing is going right. I'm just getting sicker. Or if you're not getting sicker, you're certainly not getting better. So you don't know what to do. And those doctors that are like, oh, well, you know, you're just overweight, or it's just anxiety, or it's just stress, or change your diet. Sometimes, yes, they could be absolutely right. A lot of the time, no, they're missing things and they don't know how to dig for them, or they don't know how to analyze the results that they've gotten. They don't know how to analyze that. They don't know how to piece all that together and, you know, make the puzzle fit so that they can get you an answer and the appropriate treatment. So after this man said that to me, I was kind of taken aback, because I had never heard it from my pulmonologist before. I've heard it from rheumatology, because, you know, weight directly impacts your joints and can be hard on your joints. Okay, fine, I hear you. I know I've got some weight to lose, but, you know, yes, it affects things, of course, but it's not the reason why I'm having this. Okay, I'm not that overweight, and this is absolute nonsense. So I had asked for pulmonary rehab. I said, since I had COVID in February, since I had COVID, I have not been able to fully rebound from that, and I'm constantly struggling. I constantly have air hunger, which is explained by the atelectasis. So, you know, I looked up everything that I needed to look up to find what I needed, and it was pulmonary rehab. So I asked him for pulmonary rehab, and he said, you know, they're just going to make you work out. And I don't think I ever really wanted to hit a doctor as much as I did that man today. That's absolutely unacceptable. Thank you for sharing and helping us. It sucks to get pushed to yet another doctor. It really, really does, Taylor. It really, really does. And as many times as, I know you and I have talked about that so much, as many times as I go through it, it's still hard. I feel like I have like a tea leaf on me. Oh, I did. It's still really hard to walk into a doctor's office and get through 2-3 visits with them. And then after that third visit, you're like, oh, another dead end. It's really hard. It is just, it's so defeating, and it's just really, it's hard to move past. So when that happens, I always like to tell people that you need to feel your feelings, feel the feels, go through all of that and have your moments, and then you need to pick yourself up and keep fighting for yourself, because you're the only person that's going to fight for yourself, is when it comes down to it. You know, I'm still blessed that I still have my mom, and she's still working. She's in the medical field, so you know, she was you know, nice enough to get on the computer immediately, start looking for doctors, and like, okay, this person. She looked up my doctor, and she was like, where did he go to school? Like, we'd never even heard of the medical school. So you have to look at their background too. When you are searching for doctors, when it's time to find a doctor, when a doctor talks to you like that, when a doctor is like very demeaning and just very rude to you, you need to move on. You need to go somewhere else. When you are searching for a new doctor, you need to start, I hear this all the time, and I actually put a questionnaire box up. I wanted to do it here too, but I just, like I said, I was on the fence on whether or not I was going to share this tonight. But I did put it on Instagram, and people asked how to change doctors when you have crappy insurance. I had several people ask a question, questions all pretty much around insurance. And the big thing is you have to work with your insurance. Just because you have insurance, your relationship with your insurance company doesn't stop at you holding the card, you know, and paying the bills. You need to talk to them. They have advocates. They have patient advocates. I hate these tools. They have patient advocates, and those patient advocates are there to help you. They get paid to work with you. So you need to call them up. You need to ask for a patient advocate. You will get assigned a patient advocate, and that is your patient advocate. Like, that is the person you're going to call. You're going to say, hey, I've got this going on. We need to get this fixed. That's the person that's going to help you. If you don't like your patient advocate, get a new one. You can request a different one, and it's totally fine. You are paying for this service, so utilize it. Okay? So if you need a new doctor, the very first thing you do is you call that little number on the back of your insurance card and you say, I have this going on. I need a pulmonologist. Okay. So they will search their database and they will find all these doctors. They'll email you a list if you ask for it, or they'll mail it out, however you want to get it. And they will give you all the information you need, contact information, their full names, all of that. Then before you call these doctors up, you need to research them. You need to go online and you need to Google these doctors. And it's very easy to do. It's very easy to find information about them. They always have stuff posted in the hospital system that they work with. So you can find what hospital they did their residency at. If they have, you know, specialists, in my case, if you're going to see pulmonology, rheumatology, oncology, cardiology, those are specialties. And they will, it's not just your residency. Sometimes it's a fellowship. Sometimes whatever else their training is. If they have any specialized training, that's in there. Then their residency, then their medical school. Sometimes even where they did their, their bachelor's, their undergrad stuff. So you then go and look up that hospital that they had their residency done. You look up that fellowship that they had, and the doctor that they did the fellowship under, you look them up because that's who they learned from. So now you know what's in their brain. Like, what voice are they hearing? What kind of bedside manner does this person have? What did they learn from? That's what you need to figure out. You really need to put your detective hat on and research your doctor, because a little bit of research is going to save you a whole lot of heartbreak. Theoretically, okay? Things still go wrong. I did not research this doctor. I just took who I was given because At the time, I didn't have any other option. I didn't have a reliable vehicle that I could drive 2+ hours, hour and a half plus, to go see another doctor. So I'm like, I have to take what there is here right now. Now I can go a little farther, and I can go find the doctor that's 2 hours away, and get the right kind of care. So after you've done your detective work and you think you found a good doctor, then you call them up and you ask, like, especially if it's a faraway hospital, you can say, do they do telehealth calls? Because now the doctor's offices, like, something that great that came out of COVID is that the doctor's offices, a lot of them will take telehealth. So you'll have your initial appointment that you have to get established with it. So you have to be there for them, and they'll get all your vitals and they get all your history and they do all that stuff. And then your subsequent appointments, like, they can send your orders into another hospital system. So like, if you're at hospital A and that's the closest hospital to you, but you're going to hospital B where this doctor is, it's 2, 3, 4 hours away, I don't know. They can send those orders back to hospital A, and you can get your MRIs, your CTs, your blood work, your x-rays, like whatever, you can get that done there. Anything that is directly needed to be done by that doctor, you need to go back to hospital B. Any kind of like, okay, now they need to actually see you and examine you, you need to go to hospital B. Maybe that's once a year, and your initial startup with that doctor is going to be more travel. But after that, if they do telehealth, then you don't have to travel so much, and you can just do your checkups and do your normal, blood work or whatever, all of that maintenance stuff, that routine stuff, that can be done there. So that's pretty much the gist of what I wanted to talk about with healthcare. Like, don't accept that crap from doctors. Like I said, they work for you. And if you have doctors that are not listening to you for any reason, you don't feel heard, you feel dismissed, and you feel like they're trying to pawn off something onto something that you don't even feel like you have. I mean, seriously think about it. Seriously consider, like, okay, if you're blaming this on anxiety, do I have anxiety? Or maybe do I have anxiety that's secondary to, this doctor that won't get to the bottom of what's going on with me? So you really have to think about that and listen to them, but also know that you know yourself better than anybody. And there's no way that if you know in your gut that this is wrong, there's no way that you should be continuing a treatment that you know is wrong, okay? Don't just accept it just because they're a doctor. That's not okay. I did have one other question. That was an Instagram question that I thought would be good to share here, and it was about biologics and whether, like, why, if you take a biologic medication. So I just shared a short here on YouTube that talked about, it was showing me taking my Humira injection, and all of the text on it said that you don't have to just choose herbalism or conventional medicine, how there's room for both of them. And the question that I got was, how come when you take the biologic, you feel so much better? It's not just that one, issue that you're taking it for. Like, if you're taking it for AS, in my case, you're taking it for ankylosing spondylitis and your back hurts all the time, and the Humira, how come it helps more than just your back? Because your inflammation in your body, when you have systemic inflammation, and this is kind of like a blanket statement here, if you have systemic inflammation and then you treat your inflammation aggressively and abruptly, like with Humira, it is like you inject that stuff into you, and it is like immediately, like within 30 minutes, I'm like, oh, I can take a breath. My palpitations stop. Like, I feel fabulous, and it's wonderful. And it's funny because I cried like a baby. It was not pretty the first time I took that shot, because it's scary. It's really scary. But after I took that and I started like feeling the results from it, and feeling the not having that inflammation, because I think when you have chronic inflammation, you feel it for so long, it just feels normal to you, and you don't realize that it's a problem until it starts going away. And then you're like, oh, this actually feels better. And then you're more aware of it. So treating the inflammation, that's why that works so well, is because all of the inflammation that's in so many other parts of your body that you just, it crept up on you for so long, it's normal now, and you weren't really hyper aware of it like you are the pain that you deal with on a regular basis. So when that inflammation goes away, it's leaps and bounds better. Okay, so my comments are like not even moving. Like if I scroll up on it, it's just frozen. So if anybody's asking questions or commenting on anything, I cannot see it. So I'm just going to keep talking. And if you have questions, just please stick them down there. Whenever it pops back up, I will answer them. And if it doesn't, I will answer them for the replay, and then they'll be there. So when you're going through something like this, it stresses your body big time. It causes cortisol spikes, and cortisol is necessary. But if you have frequent spikes, and this is just the routine that you're doing, that's very bad for your body. Being excessively exhausted. So like when you're emotionally drained, that causes cortisol problems. When you go through something like this, like all day today, I have just been so drained. I did that, and I had plans for the day. Like I had to homeschool the kids. We still got that done. But I'd homeschool the kids. Mark tagged a deer the other night. So, we had to process that. We got that done. But there was a lot of other things that I wanted to do today, just within my home. And I did not have the bandwidth to do that. So I pretty much just stayed in the kitchen knocking things out because I could put myself on autopilot and not think about things. Because this was super hard for me today. I don't, and it also brought up some hard memories about when I went through with finding a rheumatologist and knowing that I could very well be dealing with this in March when I go see my new rheumatologist, because my old rheumatologist retired. So this could be all over again. He could look at me, or she, whoever, I don't even know who I'm saying. It's just in a group and I forget. I think it's a female. I don't know. Anyway, so that doctor could look at me and go, no, you've been misdiagnosed. You don't have AS, and take me off biologics. And then I will be at square one with even more damage and more pain and more problems. And that's like my biggest fear. But also I have a primary doctor who will continue my medications until I find a good doctor. She's good with that. So if you're having issues and you're looking for a primary doctor, I think your primary doctor is probably your most important doctor, because this is supposed to be the doctor that's going to be advocating for you, and the one that is going to kind of tie everything together. Sometimes it's a specialist. Like in my case, it was my rheumatologist, but since he retired, so most of the time, sometimes it's a specialist, but most of the time it is a primary care doctor. So that's like an internal medicine doctor or a family medicine doctor. Usually family medicine doctors, especially if they're DOs, look for DOs, because they treat the whole person, not just, oh, high blood pressure. Here you go. They look at the whole person. They look at the big picture. Of course, best would be functional medicine doctor. But if you can't find that, find a DO. And if you can't find that, then there's MDs. But those tend to be, just the training is a little different. So it can be way more frustrating to deal with, unfortunately. But back to herbs. So the herbs that I'm taking right now to like really support myself during the stress, this is like the worst stool ever. It's so hard. I'm taking Tulsi. I'm taking nettle. The Tulsi is like the biggest adaptogen that I want to be taking right now. I just have like, it works the best for me. And there's many different varieties of Tulsi. I can't off the top of my head think of how many there are. There's Rama. That's the one that I have right now is Rama Tulsi. There's one that starts with a K. Man, my brain is just mush today. There's many different kinds of Tulsi. And Tulsi is very supportive. When I was talking about your immune system and talking about like cold and flu, and I talked about if you have immune system issues, autoimmune disease, anything like that, you should stay away from elderberry and echinacea. Take astragalus instead, because astragalus is an immune modulating herb, and immune modulating herbs help you do this. That is what adaptogenic herbs do for your body. And I've got a whole thing on adaptogenic herbs coming for YouTube very soon. But adaptogenic herbs help everything just chill. They help you not have crazy spikes and crazy dips, or when you do have those times when you're having those dips and everything is just kind of out of whack. It helps more, instead of it being like this, you know, having the big spikes and big drops, it kind of helps it do more of like a this kind of a thing. And like any herb, you really have to find the herbs that work best for you. Some herbs like Tulsi may not be your big one, like rhodiola may be fabulous for you. You can pair those together too. So there's all sorts of different ones that you can work with. And like I said, I'll have a whole bunch of information coming on that too, because if you just search adaptogenic herbs, that's overwhelming. I think that's probably one of the most overwhelming things for me was learning adaptogens. That it was like, there's so many of them. There's so many of them. And I'm still learning about them, to be perfectly honest. I am still learning about them. I've got a good adaptogenic book. Maybe I'll share that one. There's an adaptogenic book. It's like this thick. You can get it off Amazon. It's not that expensive. But it's got lots of information on everything that they do for you and all sorts of good herbs in there, how to use them, when to use them, all of that good information. So I'll be sharing stuff about that. So you guys are very quiet tonight. Or like I said, it's just my YouTube thing doesn't want to share comments. So if you are hearing me okay, drop a comment or an emoji or something so I know you guys can hear me. And then I know I like making sure I can actually see you guys. Because I see there's people here. There's quite a few people here, according to my thingy. What I had on my topic initially, my topic list here, my little content calendar of what I was going to share tonight. And what I share in lives is like what I talk about for the whole week in, you know, all the different platforms. But I was going to talk about preserving herbs. And I think because of this, we're just going to kind of shift gears a little bit because it's so important. It's so important to know how to advocate for you. Oh, good, Paula. Thank you. I'm glad that you could. Thanks for popping on and saying something. It's very important to be able to advocate for yourself. And I think when people give up on healthcare, on modern healthcare, on conventional medicine, and they jump headfast into herbalism, that kind of sets you up for disaster with herbalism, because it puts a lot of crazy expectations on herbalism, basically on herbs. You are going from conventional medicine to like, this didn't work. I'm going over here. I'm going to do the natural way. Okay, but do you understand the natural way? Do you understand that it takes time? That it takes a lot of time. It's not just popping an aspirin because, you know, you need to thin your blood, or it's not just popping an ibuprofen because you have a headache. It takes time, and you got to find the right herbs, and you have to do the trial and error. Oh, thanks, Robin. You have to do the trial and error, and you have to figure out what works and what doesn't work for you. And even though you still have that with conventional medicine, it's a faster turnaround, you know? And then there's way more people out there that have licenses and have certifications, and they're the experts, right? That are going to tell you this medication will work for this medication doesn't work for that. Stay away from this class. There's all of this research on that. There's more information out there. And then with herbalism, it's really hard to find someone to trust and to help you navigate that stuff, because in the US, there's no licenses, there's no certifications. So if you come across someone and they're like, oh, I'm a certified herbalist, honey, no, you're not. No, you're not, because there's no such thing as a certified herbalist in the United States anywhere. Any state, there is no such thing. They can be certified in an aspect of something, of herbalism, but like to be a certified herbalist, like you can be certified clinical herbalist, but that's basically, you're a certified clinician. You're not a certified herbalist. You're just certified to be able to meet with patients. That's not being a certified herbalist. It's different. So there's a lot of different kind of gray area stuff. So finding a person that can help you navigate the things can be very difficult. So that's why I want to come on and give you all the information, so like you can be your own person. And of course I can answer everything that I can and help you along the way. And those that I know personally, I'm definitely willing to help as much as I can. But education is so important, guys. Education and educating yourself and knowing how to get around these systems that are just so awful, and knowing how, when to move on, and knowing how to advocate for yourself is so, so important. So if anybody has any questions, now would be a great time, because my voice is about had it tonight. So I think it's probably going to be a shorter one tonight. Next week, I will be talking about, what did I have on? Let's see what I had on for next week. Next week was going to be adaptogens. Was when I was going to start diving into adaptogens. This week was going to be all preserving herbs. Let's do it. How crazy do I want this week to be? You know what, let's do it. Let's talk about preserving herbs. Who wants to talk about preserving herbs? Yay. And what we're going to do first is we're going to move. We're going to go take our tea, and we're going to take this tripod, and we're going to go move over here to a more comfortable chair, because this is killing me. So come with me over here. All right. And we're going to sit over here. Whoa, that's very close. All right. Oh, that's so much better. New live spot. We need to move back a little bit though. There we go. Okay, these are very noisy chairs because they're like leathery. Okay, so let's talk about preserving herbs. We're just gonna do it. We're gonna go for it. And we're gonna put all this information. It's gonna be a very informative week. Preserving herbs. So when you're preserving herbs, okay, if you guys grow herbs, if you grow herbs, give me a hands up. Give me a hello, give me something. Let me know if you grow your herbs, or if you're interested in growing your herbs. Because that's a whole other thing. And I do want to do more like how to grow certain herbs. I did some cold stratifying videos. One good one last year, I think it was on lavender, cold stratifying lavender. And cold stratification is the act of like basically putting your seeds through a dormancy so that they can germinate in the spring. So I did lavender. What else did we do? Skullcap. Oh, I can't even remember everything I did in that. Hops. Got hops. I think there were like 6 herbs I did. Maybe it was 4. I don't know. But it's in that video. That's a great video. And I go through the whole process and how I do it. Normally when people cold stratify on like a smaller scale, you wet the seeds and you put them in a like you wet the paper towel basically. Like people wet the paper towel, put the seeds on it, put another paper towel on top, damp paper towel, put it in a Ziploc bag, and then stick it in the fridge. So you've got moist seeds. They're in a moist environment, dark environment for the most part, and they're in a cold environment, and you're mimicking dormancy. What I like to do is plant them in dirt, plant them in potting soil, in little cubes. And I do it on a bigger scale, so I do it like in these big trays. And then I will put them outside in a black box with a tarp over it so they get 0 sunlight. And I will stack the trays, and then they will freeze and they will go through a dormancy. They're in soil so that in the spring, when it is time for them to germinate, all I do is bring the trays in, take the trays out, put them either in a light if they're light germinators, or on top of seed starting mats if they're seed starter, or if they're heat germinators, and off we go. It just depends on the seed. But that's a whole other thing that we can talk about when the time comes, but that was just kind of an overview of what's in that video if you're interested, because depending on your zone, you may need to start doing that stuff, like your cold stratification. You may need to start doing that soon. You may need to start doing that like in December. So that's important to get familiar with that if you want to grow some herbs, because pretty much, and it's not the case for all of them, but there's several herbs that are perennial that you would need to cold stratify to get them started the following year, because so many herbs are perennial and they need that dormancy period. So back to preserving. We haven't even really started this. Preserving herbs you can do in a few different ways. So if you are harvesting your herbs, of course, you can dry them. I have had a lot of questions and comments about, my herbs are getting all dry and crusty and brown, and they don't have the vibrant colors that I see your herbs have. So that has to do with how you're drying them. When you're drying your herbs, they need ventilation. If they don't have ventilation, they're not going to dry properly, or they're going to mold, or they're going to get, some other kind of health hazard, basically, to be on your plants, and you won't be able to see them initially, and then you run the risk of ingesting that. So what you want is, I basically have dryer racks, and just like huge racks, like clothes drying racks, like just like they fold up. And I rubber band them, not big bunches, like, maybe like that, and rubber band them up good. And then I split them and I put them over the pole. And then I keep fans. I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 like tabletop fans, and 1 standing fan, and sometimes a box fan. And it just depends on how humid the house is. It depends on what herbs I'm working with. If it's an herb that holds more moisture, or if it's something that's light and airy, like peppermint or something like that, those tend to dry way faster. But things that have like mucilage in it, like marshmallow, mucilage is going to, that's more of a water content. Calendula. I keep seeing things recently. It's like bombarding me with, oh, you just dry calendula for a little bit. No, calendula takes days to dry because of the resin in it. And when I pop those tops off, when I'm harvesting calendula, I have to do them like on screens and big flat areas, and then have fans blowing into it. And then I make sure I move it several times a day so nothing is clumping up, because then it'll compromise your entire harvest. I miscalculated my peppermint to vodka ratio. Too much peppermint. It's been a week and I forgot to get more vodka. What should I do? Can I top it off? Just top it off. Yeah. That is totally fine. You miscalculated your peppermint. I'm just reading it again. To vodka ratio, too much peppermint. Was it fresh peppermint or was it dried peppermint? But yeah, you can totally just add more vodka to it if you need to add more vodka, and that'll be fine. Excuse me. Yeah, that'll be fine. And then you just might have to just give it a little extra time and make sure you shake it really well. Yes, fresh. Okay. So Paula, what was your ratio that you did? Because for peppermint, I don't think there's such thing as too much peppermint. With that one, I think you'd probably be fine if you filled up the whole thing, as long as it wasn't like crammed in there, you know what I mean? So it was tight and you didn't have a whole lot of air in there, and space for the vodka to get in. I think you'd be fine. But the peppermint, you'd probably, if it was fresh, yeah, you'd be fine. Let me know what your ratio was. You can either put it here or you can send it to me and we can talk more about it later. That's totally fine either way. Okay, so what were we talking about already? All right, so that was one way, dehydration. Temperature is another thing. If it is super hot, then it's not going to dry right. It breaks down the medicinal properties. And that has to do with having it in the right light conditions too. You have to make sure that it is, oh, that's totally fine if you don't remember. Totally fine. I think you'll be fine. If you want to top it off with more vodka, go for it and just shake it up good and just give it, a little extra time. You'll be fine. Oh, we're going to start with the eye. That's not because I'm tired. It's because of my asthma. Yay. And my tea is cold, which doesn't help me at all. Okay, so when you are putting your herbs, if you're hanging them, you need to make sure that there is no sunlight on them. You need to make sure that it is a cooler, dark, it doesn't have to be pitch black, okay, but it does have to be darker. Like, we've got these closed and I would pull these curtains in front of it, okay? It doesn't have direct sunlight on it and do a little experiment, like take a little sprig of whatever and put one off over here in the dark behind everything so no direct sunlight is touching it, and then leave one out in the same temperature conditions, but you change that light. This one will maintain all of its properties and its color and its scent and everything. This one will look like death. It'll just be crispy and brown and lifeless. So it is, oh good, Robin, the cold stratification. It is interesting. They're fun little science experiments. We actually incorporate a lot of herbalism stuff when I'm teaching science to my kids, like, photosynthesis and all of the plant life stuff. We do it all through herbs because, there's no better example. So that is very important. Your light and your temperature are super, super important, and your airflow. If you don't want to hang or you don't have the space to hang, like I turned my entire dining room, we got rid of the dining room table because it just ended up being a catch-all. We ate in the living room anyway. We all just kind of hang out, and we are where we plop down and eat and talk and sometimes watch TV, and sometimes we go eat outside. I don't know. We're just kind of wherever. We don't have like a set dining room schedule. And really it was with little kids with sensory issues, it was very frustrating. So taking it out of the dining room table, more, I guess, normal setting, was very, very helpful for us in, dinner time sanity. So that table ended up just getting pretty much destroyed when being a catch-all for homeschool stuff. And I'm like, I need more herb room. Let's just get rid of the table. So we got rid of the table, and I put up all these herb racks or drying racks, clothes drying racks, and the chandelier, you guys have seen the pictures. The chandelier ended up hanging mugwort for days, like so much mugwort. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 massive bundles that were probably 3.5 feet long of mugwort. It was crazy. But, excuse me, I could keep the curtains drawn. I could keep the light out. I had all of the light, or all of the fans going. I had an air conditioner in there too. If you can have an air conditioner in there on dry, I kept it on the dry setting so it would pull the moisture out of the air, because that's another thing to consider too. When you're drying a lot of herbs, it adds a lot of moisture to your air. So if you're adding that into your home, you should have some way of dehumidifying the air. And we just did that with the air conditioners because in our house we have window units. So that was very, very important to have that set on dry. If you have a dehydrator, like, even the cheap old Nesco ones that are just, the round things where you can stack them up like that, those work great. That's how I started dehydrating, and I actually just got rid of it. Was it last year or the year before? And it was a nice, handy little tool when you were getting started. You want to make sure, a lot of them have settings on them. Some of them just say low, medium, high. It's important when you're doing herbs that you know that you are going to be under 100 degrees. I don't ever dry my herbs above 95 because, again, with the heat, if you have more heat, it breaks down your herbs.
So that's super important to not do that. You don't want to do that. Um, the more lifeless they look, assume the less medicinal properties are in them. So like I was saying, that like dry, crunchy, brown herb that just looks like death, assume that's not going to have much of anything into it. So that's dehydration. And then some herbs, it's when I'm putting, now I've got, like the big, you guys have seen in my videos, I've got the big silver commercial one sitting behind me in a lot of my kitchen videos. Those, and it's pretty much always running during the summer and the fall. I just actually finished what I think is going to be my last run in the dehydrator for this year. And I'm very excited about it. I've got thyme, sage. What else do I have? Mullein. I think that was it. Yeah, because the rosemary I didn't put in there. So yeah, I think that was it. Thyme, sage, mullein is in there. And that's it. And that's going to be it for the year, which is so crazy. I can't believe that the growing season is already over. But that dehydrator is really, really nice because it moves a lot of air through it, and it significantly decreases the amount of time that it takes to get those herbs dry. I think in those Nesco ones, even though they work totally fine, they're much louder and they take significantly longer to dry herbs. I never recommend drying in an oven because ovens don't get down underneath 100 degrees. That's just not something that they do. So I would not recommend using an oven. I think the lowest I've ever heard somebody say that their oven gets down to is 200, and that's still way too high for herbs. So don't do that. The gold star of preserving herbs is a freeze dryer. Freeze dryers lock things in a way that nothing else can for our purposes and the sheer size of the amount of herbs that we do. Can you tell my voice is like pretty much done? A freeze dryer is not practical for us. If we were doing herbs that were just for us, it'd probably be on my list for things. And actually, for a while, a freeze dryer was on my list because I just really wanted to have one because there were a lot of other awareness application that I really wanted to do. And honestly, I had a lot of herb stuff that I really wanted to play around with. And I thought that that would be really fun to have and experiment with and work on preservation. I wanted to do all of the homeschooling science experiments with it. My kids wanted to freeze dry candy. They still do because they see people doing that. But that's like the gold star. It locks in the medicinal properties like nothing else does. But if that, if you don't have a random $4,000 laying around to get yourself a freeze dryer, which honestly I hear totally mixed reviews on from people that I personally know. I hear people love and rave about it. They use it almost daily. It's just wonderful. It's a regular appliance that they use. And then I know other people that had a problem with it once and it never worked right. And I have heard, I do not know this from personal experience, but I have heard that the one company that does these freeze dryers, it costs an arm and a leg to get it returned to them. Like they'll take it back and they'll issue you a refund, but they're going to charge you an arm and a leg to get it to them, and like restocking fees and all this stuff. That's just what I've heard. It could be totally wrong, and here I am gossiping, and that's just bad, and I shouldn't have said anything, but that's what I've heard. So, yeah, that just probably wouldn't be on my list. But for locking in the medicinal properties, that's the gold star. Okay, so then you have to think when you're preserving herbs, you have to also consider your herbal preparations. Like making a salve, you're preserving that medicinal value, the medicinal properties of that. When you are when you're tincturing, that's like the best. That's my favorite. You guys know I am partial to tinctures. I love tinctures. Tinctures and teas, those are my favorites. But tincturing is awesome because the shelf life on them is so incredibly long. With salves, you got like 6 months to a year. It just kind of depends on your salve. And how you're storing it, like if you're going to store it cold, dark place, all that stuff. If you're going to stick it in your purse, first off, you're probably going to ruin your purse. But that, you're going to be in and out of temperatures and light conditions, and that's just not going to be great for the shelf life. Things like oxymels, those don't last as long. Those only last 6 months. Oils, still, I wouldn't do an oil more than a year. Really, personal preference, I don't like to hang on to infused oils for more than 6 months because olive oil only is shelf stable for a year. And after that, it can go rancid. And then your herbal oil is rancid. And some of these herbs, once they infuse into the oils, they smell incredible. Some of them smell awful. Some of them smell absolutely horrible. Like jewelweed oil, I'm not a fan of the way that smells at all. I actually had a friend who had a son, who has a little 4-year-old boy who had, he was like broke out with something. And the theory was that he had gotten into something around a pond because every time he's around there, he ends up having like this almost dermatitis kind of reaction. And I was like, I've got some jewelweed. And she did that for a while, but he couldn't stand the smell of it. So he was like, no, I don't want it. I don't want it. And she ended up putting oregano oil on and they got it under control. But oh my goodness, some people just like the smell of them is just not good. And I can't imagine rancid olive oil on top of that. Oh, that would be awful. That would be horrible. So, your herbal preparations are a form. Wasn't that funny? Are a form of preservation. So then there's oxymels. Did I say oxymels? Syrups. I wouldn't really consider your teas and decoctions a form of preservation. That's not a form of preservation. It's the dehydration that you do to preserve your teas and things and your bulk herbs. That's your preservation. And then storing your herbs, when you're storing them, it's very important that you're also storing them the same way that you kind of would when you're going through the preservation process. When you're making a tincture, you need it in a cool, dry place. When you're dehydrating, you need it in a cool, dry place. You don't, a dark place. You need everything protected from light, protected from extreme temperatures. It's the same thing when you're storing it. If you've seen my floor-to-ceiling apothecary, that light does not touch it, ever. I even put a curtain on the top of it just in case, because right next to it, we've got the door, and then there's a mudroom there that gets a lot of light, but the light never actually reaches the apothecary, so I don't have to worry about that. But I was ready. I was ready with a curtain rod just in case. Just in case stuff was coming too close. I did not want anything to get risked. I didn't want the risk of anything breaking down. So your storage is very important. I would not, unless you have a 100% like dry basement, you never have moisture issues, never have rodent issues or anything, I would never store herbs in the basement. I will never do it. I will store my home canned stuff in the basement because that's fine. I'm not worried about that. But I won't store herbs. There's no way. There's no way I'm going to do it. The other way, the last way, is Mylar. If I have bulk herbs, so if I'm growing a ridiculous amount of oregano or red clover, those are the two big ones that I had to Mylar first. I will put the herbs in Mylar. I don't put in oxygen absorbers because oxygen absorbers are more of a long-term storage thing. Like if they're going to be in there for a long time, then you'd use an oxygen absorber. But if you're going to be using them within a year, you don't need that. You don't need an oxygen absorber for herbs. Did I say that right? You don't need an oxygen absorber for herbs that they're already dehydrated fully and completely, that you are going to be using within a year, because you shouldn't be keeping these herbs for longer than a year. Anyway, you should be rotating through them and using them. So that's important. But Mylar is a really, really nice way of storing them because it's airtight. And like you're not going to have drafts going through there. They're puncture. If you get good quality Mylar, it's puncture resistant. I got a whole bunch from Wallaby when I worked with them on a sponsorship thing. And they gave me a whole bunch of Mylar. So I'm still working off of that. Some of them were like huge 5-gallon bags. and you can cut some of those and reseal and reuse. And then there were a bunch of, you can get them where they're zip topped. So they're really nice. I don't like to keep them in the original. If there's herbs that I'm purchasing because we don't grow it, or we didn't grow enough of it, or it's just not established yet and we have plans to, but you know, we're still in the building process, then those herbs I will buy. So my go-to, if you saw my herb haul, my go-to is Oshala. Guys, those herbs are amazing. They are just, they're wonderful. If you purchase from a small farm, so like if you purchase our herbs, or if you purchase Oshala's herbs, or you know, if you've got another local herb farm that you know that has the right kinds of growing practices, and you know they're organic or regenerative, they don't spray anything, they don't get overspray, that they've got good preservation technique and everything, and then you use that herb in compared to getting it from a bigger company, the quality of that herb is incredible. It is so fresh. It is so incredible. It is like a just the smell alone. Like I got the box. The UPS guy puts the boxes like into our mudroom when he comes. And when I opened the mudroom door when we got home, the whole mudroom smelled like just the combination of these herbs, and it was so incredible. So, but anyway, when I get those herbs, like they send them in paper bags, which I love. But then there's, you know, the big companies like Mountain Rose Herbs, Star West Botanicals, Frontier Co-op, they have to store for a little bit longer because they have so much, you know, they're in bulk and they're in warehouses. So it's, you know, it's not as, it's still like, you know, they still have their like first in, first out kind of processes and things to go through inventory like everybody does. But it's just so much more. So some stuff can sit there a little longer, and you know, there's just a different process. And then the packaging has to be a little bit different. So they use, I don't even know what that is, to be perfectly honest. I don't know if that's just a really thin mill Mylar or what. I don't know. But I transfer mine because it is really thin, and I would just like more protection for them, because some of these herbs, when you buy in bulk, they're pricey. And we're buying a lot when we have to buy things. Like if I'm going to buy nettle, you saw my Oshala video, if you saw that, I bought I bought 2 pounds of it, but it ended up being 4 gallons worth. 4 gallons of nettle is what I got from them. And that's on top of the nettle that we already had. I already had a couple gallons of our own. So now I think we have 7 gallons of nettle currently. That's a lot of nettle. That's a lot. So we will have all the nettle things. I'll be making nettle rosemary soap. We'll be making nettle tincture, nettle in all of the tea. There's so many teas that we make that have nettle. And then nettle oils, so many things. So many things with nettle. But it's great. It's amazing quality. So anyway, all right. If nobody has any other questions, I'm going to run and get off for the night, and I'm going to get some much needed sleep tonight, I hope. That's my plan. Hopefully everything cooperates and all the children sleep and everything will be good. So if you guys have any other questions or anything about anything that I mentioned, especially earlier in the video that you didn't want to drop here and you want to talk about like off camera here, definitely you can email me. You can hit me up over on Instagram. You can always DM me there. However you want. All my contact stuff is in there, and I would be happy to have that conversation with you. So thanks for joining me tonight, guys, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.